Welcome back to the Forward Party podcast. In this next segment, we're turning our focus to service, which is a theme we hear over and over and over again at the Forward Party. The people who step up for their communities, their country, and their fellow citizens. We'll explore what civic responsibility looks like in practice, how local leadership strengthens democracy, and why national security begins with trust and engagement at the community level. First, we'll be joined by Bob Perls, chair of the New Mexico Party and a longtime civic leader, including a former elected state legislator. Bob has been deeply involved in building independent political infrastructure in his state, working to expand voter choice and strengthen local engagement across New Mexico. He'll share what motivated him to take on this role and how New Mexico's political landscape creates real opportunity for political independence. Then we'll welcome Sarah Czech. Sarah is a U.S. military veteran and the national leader of Forward's Veterans and Military Families Committee. Sarah advocates for veterans, service members, and military families with a focus on community support, accountability, and nonpartisan leadership. She'll talk about the challenges military families often face, how her service shaped her views on leadership, and why keeping veterans' issues above partisan politics is essential to rebuilding civic trust. Service doesn't end with a uniform, and strong communities are the foundation of a resilient nation. Let's get started. We are thrilled to welcome New Mexico Forward State Party Chair Bob Perls to the podcast today. Bob actually served in the New Mexico Legislature and brings a really unique perspective to his leadership in the state. Bob has quickly scaled the volunteer base in New Mexico to gather signatures and apply for state party ballot access in New Mexico. We're thrilled to have him join us today to talk about his experience as an elected official, as a civic leader in the state, and as the state party lead for Forward Party New Mexico. Hi, Bob.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for including me.
Thank you for being here. So, what are you guys working on right now at the New Mexico Forward Party? You've been busy.
We have been. We're about 16 months into this experiment, and I feel like it's going well. We've got a great core group of leaders with amazing backgrounds. We have a former U.S. ambassador. We have a world-class professional communications team. We have from 21 years old, probably to 80 years old in terms of range of expertise. And we've been lucky enough to get some good donations so that we could hire a professional field organizer. And now we have a part-time paid executive director. So we continue to scale the team up.
That's fantastic. Having served in the state legislature, Bob, what made you think that now was an interesting opportunity and the right moment to scale a new political party in the state?
Yeah, I kind of went from being a really solid Democrat, having served a couple of terms in the state house. I ran for Congress. I ran for another statewide office, and all of those offices were as a Democrat. But then I had a chance to serve as a U.S. diplomat with the State Department abroad. And when I came back from that in 2015, I realized that the U.S. really wasn't any longer the beacon of democracy throughout the world. And so I saw the problems from the inside with the Democratic Party. I saw from an outside perspective the problems that we're having in the U.S. coming together and consensus building. And so I finally thought, after 10 years of being an independent voter and organizing a nonprofit focused on passing open primaries in New Mexico, that it was really time to figure out how to best organize independent voters, independent candidates, disaffected Democrats and Republicans. And it seemed like the Forward Party might be the best avenue.
And Bob, can you go into a little bit of how you stood it up and how you appealed to the volunteers that you've gotten to be able to get as far as you've gotten? Because you've done incredible things in a really short period of time to get the signatures that you've gotten. Not an easy task.
Well, thank you. I've been pretty good all my life at starting startups, spinning up startups, 3 different private sector companies, a charter school, several 501c3s. And when I decided to do this, I reached out to activists who had been involved with the democracy reform movement that I spearheaded in New Mexico. And then Forward Party had some nice contacts in New Mexico of folks who wanted to engage in a leadership position. And so really it was a combination of all of those, of enthusing a team, engaging a team, letting them experiment with bringing forth their expertises and not trying to micromanage people. And over the last year, we've ended up with really an amazing team, only part of which I can take credit for. So I think it's the right timing. Without sounding too partisan, I think the Trump presidency, both in 2016 and then the 2020 election where he was defeated, and then in 2024 where he won again, has really energized folks left, right, and center. And again, the attraction to the Forward Party has been a commitment to the rule of law, a commitment to upholding the Constitution. And I think there's a good 80 or 90% of Americans who feel like the national administration has not necessarily always done that. So there's deep concern about the direction the country is going in. But instead of turning to the Democrats as the alternative to the MAGA faction of Trump, more and more Americans and New Mexicans are looking for an alternative organization that's going to be data-driven, uphold the rule of law, and very much be focused on democracy reform so that we enfranchise as many voters to participate as often as possible.
So Bob, the top job of every state lead, and I've tried to do this in Massachusetts as a Republican, which was certainly a very difficult job to get out there and energize people and get them to run for office. How do you get people to think about running for office when you're speaking with them and saying, I'd like you to run as a Ford candidate? That's a new thing. How do you get people to think about that?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And in the last week, I've actually spoken with two different folks who reached out who are both incredibly credible candidates for governor. And perhaps as a young startup, running a statewide campaign for governor might be an overreach, but I'm just so flattered that we're already at the point where very well-known, credible candidates are reaching out. And one of the two of them is still debating about running as an independent versus a Fordist. And much of the pitch I made to her, and this meeting was just 2 days ago, was that we have dynamic female leadership at the very highest level of our national party. And she would be mentored, she would be guided, not only with the infrastructure we've established locally, but that we're in a unique position nationally to offer sort of thoughtful, moderate, mainstream centrist approach to problem solving that will help her and inform her campaign. And even though her local advisors were saying, let's run as an independent, she left the meeting realizing that the Forward Party really brought a lot to the table.
Bob, when
great.
you talk about, you're pitching these candidates and talking to them about the fact that we are focused on consensus building and common sense, that's a broad coalition that we're holding together at the Forward Party. And talk about how you hold that coalition together in New Mexico. Who are the kinds of coalition leaders that you're bringing together? You talk about this wonderful diversity in your volunteer leadership there. It's tough to hold a coalition together, but that's kind of the secret sauce here, right?
It is. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, and we'll see whether I'm doing a good job of doing that or not, because any group, small or large, has such a diversity of opinion, because some people think we're a centrist moderate party, whatever that means. We do seem to be attracting a lot of, quote, progressives who are really quite traditionally liberal, but are deeply disaffected from the Democratic Party because of the internal party politics, but they feel very differently than some of the centrists. We also have several very stalwart, staunch, old-style Republicans on our executive committee who objectively probably disagree with some of the progressives on the committee. And so we have to keep hearkening back to our underlying principles. Mm-hmm. And I keep reminding the media and folks I meet with that we're not a centrist moderate party. Rather, in traditional liberal gerrymandered districts, probably the forward candidates will be more liberal. In the more conservative districts, especially the state house and state senate seats, our forward candidates are probably going to be more conservative. And so we go back to what binds us. And the bonds are a commitment to democracy reform, like open primaries and ranked choice voting and independent redistricting, term limits, free and fair ballot access. We go back to the rule of law and upholding the Constitution and a commitment to entrepreneurship and capitalism. We're not democratic socialists. And so if I keep refocusing on what makes us stronger as a group and not what divides us, that's the same message that resonates with the public when we talk about what the Forward Party stands for.
And a lot of those principles, those core principles that we have, speak to the how. And I think a lot of what people are objecting to now in politics is not the what, but the how and how things are being done. And so one of the wonderful promises of the Forward Party is that it really is very prescriptive about the fact that we want to be collaborative, we want to be data-driven, we want to be civil, we want to make sure that we're obeying the Constitution. So the how is very clear. Sometimes people say, well, what do you stand for? We stand for an approach and an ethical approach to service in government, which I think is quite clear.
I think Bob just articulated at the grassroots level what we're building better than most anybody I've ever heard articulate it, Bob. I mean, and you're talking about exactly what you're witnessing and the different kind of philosophical, political philosophical places that your leadership comes from. It really is fantastic and emblematic of what we're seeing in other states as well.
Yeah, I'd love it, Bob, if you could give us a little more insight into the types of people who are coming to forward, and how are you doing with younger voters? How are you doing with young people in general as far as attracting them, because they're the ones who seem to be registering. If they do register, they're registering as independents, they're non-affiliates. And are they seeing forward as something that's an avenue for them?
I think that's a good question, and I hope you can still hear me.
Yes.
My feed seems to be deteriorating. We're starting to set up student chapters in the local universities, so that's going to help. But honestly, it's been a challenge. Statistically, younger folks vote at a much lower rate than middle-aged and older folks, and it's not easy. It's not easy organizing younger folks. I think one of the great strides we've made in the last couple of months was to have the money to bring on a 30-year-old field organizer who was very successful at collecting 70, 80% of all the signatures we need to qualify. And in fact, we're over that qualification threshold now. And it's one of 4 or 5 steps to become a recognized party in New Mexico. And she was very articulate in saying that we need 20-somethings and 30-somethings who are digital natives, who really understand how to use social media to reach out. And so much of the success is going to be having the money and then the bandwidth of paid staff and volunteer staff who are the right age to reach out to like-minded folks. It's very hard as a 60-something to do that effectively.
Well, Bob, you all have just been extraordinary. Over the last 16 months, you have scaled something really lasting and durable, and it's going to make a big difference in the state of New Mexico, and we're all watching you from around the country. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
It's
Thank you for what you're
inspirational.
doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. All the best to you.
Bye, Bob.
Have fun at the Olympics. I envy you.
Thank you.
We are thrilled to welcome Sarah Czech to the Forward Party podcast today. Sarah is a military veteran who leads the Forward Party's Veterans and Military Families Committee. She's also an active member of the Forward Party of California's executive team and is leading a policy initiative for state leads around the country as we build and explore collectively the policy platform of the Forward Party. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here.
Sarah, I want to talk about coalition building and your leadership as a veteran and your leadership of the Veterans and Military Family Committee at Forward, which is a really fast-growing committee at Forward. We were chatting with Bob Perls earlier and talking about coalition building and the challenge and the opportunity in holding a coalition together at Forward full of people who come to us from all sorts of different walks of life. How are you helping to build coalition in the veterans community?
Absolutely. Great question. Well, our work with the Veteran and Military Families Committee is really to support veteran candidates running for office, of course, create a platform for independent veterans to have their voices heard and for them to meaningfully participate in politics. Some of the work we do is with other incredible organizations that are making real change in our political system, like Veterans for All Voters.
We love the guys at Veterans for All Voters. They're awesome.
They're really wonderful. And it's very important for us to create lasting and meaningful relationships with organizations like that to support their cause and they support ours. I don't believe we're going to be able to fix our entrenched political system unless we work together. So,
Sarah, I would like to ask you to talk a little bit for our audience about the connection between being in the military service and the importance of being nonpartisan and how that carries over into your post-military life and how that connects with Forward. Because I hear that again and again, but it's probably not intuitive for people who haven't served in the military.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So due to the apolitical nature of our job when we are active duty, many active duty members don't want to formally affiliate with either party, and they choose to remain unaffiliated. And that really does carry over into our life after service. Many of us stay independents. The IAVA reports that actually 55% of post 9/11 veterans don't identify with either major party. That's a huge percentage. So obviously there are a lot of veterans that are independents. And so our work is to really create a political home for them. And Forward fits perfectly into that. It allows us to build across the aisle and create real meaningful change, not just for our veteran community, but our active duty community as well.
And how are you finding, what are your biggest challenges to convincing them that this is a path for them? Because they have been, my understanding always was that the military tried to stay non-political, not just apolitical, non-political, but they need to be part of the solution. We need you all. And what's the biggest obstacle you find, and how are you overcoming that and building?
Absolutely. Well, you already named it, which is that a lot of our service organizations, they choose to remain non-political. And so it's our job to convince them that they can be a part of the solution safely, that we will not pull them into partisan warfare, that we can provide a solution and a platform for them that doesn't endanger their careers and that keeps them, again, a part of that solution and not the problem. So that has been a major obstacle, particularly the first 2 years of running this committee, finding the right way to talk to people. But it's very important that we just remain consistent in our messaging and that we continue to be great examples of leadership and, again, reaching across that aisle to work with everyone. And that will start to create and build those relationships, and we'll start to see more meaningful change. And we already have. We have some really great relationships with organizations now who feel comfortable joining in on our events and supporting us and feel comfortable with us supporting them.
Sarah, we've had some conversations as part of this podcast with culture leaders and folks who are examining current culture and especially the divisiveness that we're seeing right now. As someone who served our nation and made the ultimate, we were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, how are you and the Veterans and Military Families Committee experiencing culture right now in our nation, one that's so divided, given everything you all have given?
It's very difficult. It's honestly very difficult to watch military members often be used as a pawn in the political game. We are very frequently used, not only a veteran, but I am a military spouse as well. So I am very sensitive to how our military members are being used as chips in this political game. And it's very upsetting. All of us have a duty and a charge to serve. And it's really taking away from the mission. And I know that's how active duty members feel. But service, a lot of us believe, it's really not optional. It's an obligation. And it doesn't just come from serving our country. It comes from serving our communities and our families as well. So now, once we transition out, and those of us who are veterans and serving in this veteran committee, our focus now shifts to serving our communities and our neighbors, which is what we're doing through the Forward Party.
One of the words that comes up most frequently when we're talking to both our volunteers and our elected officials is that notion of service and that need to serve the community and the country. And so we are always so thrilled when we have candidates step forward who have military service in their background, because we know that their discussion of that is going to be so authentic to who they are. They've actually put something above themselves and often, as you mentioned, above their families, in order to serve their country. And so we're really grateful to you for all the work that you do with Forward members who've served the country. And we hope that that's one of the biggest groups that we attract and that we actually enable to give a pathway to continued service.
Sarah, beyond
Yes.
the concern of being used by the parties or being pushed into a partisan political mode, what are the biggest issues that you're finding amongst those who are in service, those who have retired from the service, from military service, that they're bringing up to you? What are their biggest concerns?
Well, one of them that the Forward Party, we are constantly working to combat is voting rights being rolled back. So active duty members and veterans both really experience restrictions to our voting rights, in particular when unaffiliated members or active duty members or veterans are unable to vote, particularly in primary elections, which, as we know, really determines who will run for office in the general. That's a major problem. So we want to support legislation that allows unaffiliated voters, anyone, to vote in primaries. Another issue, of course, is the fact that we are seeing so many of our bureaucracies be stripped, and sometimes it's 35 to 45% of our government organizations are filled with veterans, employees. And so that's a huge problem. And we see that when our organizations are just truly being gutted, a lot of us are the ones who are affected by that. Not only our healthcare, but our families. And a lot of times it's veterans themselves who are affected by that, affected by these jobs being cut. So that's for sure one of the things that's been coming up a lot over the past year or so. And even in our committee as well, we have members who've been affected by it. That's
a challenge for everybody, but it's particularly good to hear you say that, for the listeners and the watchers of this podcast to hear that, because to in any way cut back on the support for those who are willing to serve this country and put their lives on their line is shameful. And
absolutely,
this country is should be better than that. And that's why we hope more veterans and those who have not active service, I don't want to do that to them, but more veterans will feel that Forward will be a home for them, so their voices can be heard to take these messages, because I don't think many people know. They don't realize how many homeless veterans there are. They don't
absolutely
recognize the suicide numbers amongst veterans, and we're not doing what we should do to our veterans. And I'm not a veteran, but I was married to a veteran, and we're honor bound to support our veterans, and we want it Forward to provide a home so that they can be heard and articulate and work for solving those problems.
Absolutely. I think veterans bring a really distinct set of experiences to the political game. And so it's very important for us to have this committee where they feel comfortable participating in politics and participating in the Forward Party as we create a solution.
Yeah. I was going to mention that you not only help us with our veterans outreach, but you're also very involved with the Forward Party of California and part of the leadership there. Tell us about our challenges out in California, and what are you hearing from the citizens in California? What do they need in the upcoming election? How can we reach out and become a bigger player in one of our most important states?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love being here in California and being a part of this team. I've been a part of it for, I think, about 3 years now. It's been an incredible honor. And it's been wonderful to watch us kind of grow, moving into, exponentially over the last year or so. We have groups in Northern California, Southern California, Central California. It's really incredible. We have a chapter in Sacramento and San Diego. And so it's really great to watch people start to participate in a way that they didn't think they could before. We're interviewing candidates for endorsement, and watching folks get to participate in that is really incredible. But of course, one of our biggest struggles is the fact that in California, it's really a one-party state. We've talked about these concerns before, where a lot of times Forward isn't becoming the third party, it's becoming the second party realistically for a lot of these states. So it's definitely working against an entrenched political system, and it's very important for us to show that we are solution oriented, because people tend to ask us every time we talk about politics, well, are you left or right? Are you left or right? And we just try to explain to people, we're solution oriented. Help us become part of the solution. And it's, again, building that sense of trust in who we are as an organization and allowing them to be helping us build it from the ground up. So that's what we've been focused on for the last year. As you had mentioned, Lindsay, we're very excited to host this policy seminar coming up and help other states really get on their feet and create a policy foundation that aligns with Forward Party values. And we're just very excited about that. So I think what we need is people to understand that we're building, we're growing, and that we're here, and we want them to join us.
Absolutely. We are a startup. We're a startup in California. We're a startup around the country, and we need people to come and build with us. And what you've created, Sarah, in multiple spaces in the veterans community, in California, and now on the policy front, is Sarah's created really, really deliberate spaces where people can come and build together, which is so important. We've been talking to a number of different leaders and really strong voices, but what we've been, wanting to make sure that we do is we connect the dots. When someone hears an inspirational voice or an inspirational speaker, they understand where to go and plug in so they can actually, be reenfranchised, as you talked about.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things we've been hearing from, we've been hearing from so many of the people we talk to on this podcast is that we need those big ideas, those big, bold, galvanizing ideas that are not being talked about by either of the legacy parties, either on the left or the right. And very often the things that need to be talked about are the most obvious ones. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what comes out of and participating in your policy gathering, and hearing what the states are interested in, and where those solutions need to be created. So very, very excited about that.
Oh, it'll be great. And creating the solutions, too, is going to be important, or at least a path forward, showing people how they can start to address it, because the solutions aren't going to be the same for everybody, even though the problems may be the same.
Absolutely.
Sarah, as we wrap up here, if you were to make an appeal to our listeners and our viewers who might be interested in plugging into your work across those 3 different areas, in the policy work and in the Veterans and Military Families Committee, and also in the state of California, what would your appeals be? What sort of experience would people have if they reached out and started to get involved?
Great question. So I just would want to say to folks who are interested in getting involved, we cannot let perfection be the enemy of good. You have to get involved now. We need you to be a part of this iterative process. We need to take the next small step forward now and work together. And we need you. We need your voices. We need you to participate in whatever way you possibly can. Even if that is just responding to one email or participating in one meeting, their presence makes a difference. And so that's what I would tell people. Get involved now in whatever way you can. That doesn't have to be in all three areas as we've brought up, but whatever you can, whatever excites you, get involved now. Be a part of the iterative process because we need you to be part of the solution.
Sarah, you are an incredible leader for us. Thank you so much. You are like one of our favorite ambassadors who goes out and speaks about Forward. You do it so beautifully and with so much heart. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all so much and what you're doing. And I just really look up to you, and so do our viewers. So thank you so much, ladies.
You're wonderful, Sarah. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Last summer, when Elon Musk tweeted out that he was going to start a new political party, it was called the America Party, right? And he did that informal poll asking Americans, how many people think we should do this? And overwhelmingly, everybody who participated in the poll said, yes, yes, yes. And then there was all the punditry that followed. So all the reasons why a new political party couldn't work. And one of the things that a lot of the pundits said is that, well, you're pulling together this disparate coalition. And, and independents are not a monolith, right? So 45% of Americans right now are registered as independents. But it doesn't mean that they're all the same.
Which is true.
Right.
And so so a lot of the pundits would comment on, well, if you could build a coalition, if you could hold a coalition together that is values and principles based, then you would have the foundation from which you could build a new political party. And we just heard firsthand today from two people who are doing that.
Exactly. And that's what's making the difference. It's making the difference because it is value-based and not position-based, that you have to be to the left, to the right on any particular issue. Saying it's values and it's principles and it's what you believe, the things in which you believe and what your constituents or your potential constituents want. Make their communities better. And that's going to be different in every community.
And it's an approach. It's a how.
Yeah.
How are you going to do it? How are you going to approach problem solving? Well, you're going to approach it collaboratively. You're going to approach it from a point of ethics. You're going to be nonpartisan. You're going to look at the Constitution. You're going to, ask yourself, does it serve my community? And I think that knowing that people share a process, they're going to be less concerned sometimes about the precision of that outcome than they are about what was the process that led you there.
Mm-hmm.
Was it simply, my party told me to do this and therefore I'm doing it and I'm not going to even question whether it's right or wrong? Or did I go through a real deliberative process and talk to people in the community
and was there
talk to others?
transparency involved?
And was it transparent? And are we
Yeah.
ethical? People want to know that. Sometimes people are willing to accept, tough
Oh,
truths.
absolutely.
If they feel that the people who are making the decisions are good people who are working hard to truly understand their perspective.
If they respect the process, then they might not always agree with the outcome. And I think we've both been through
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
They may not agree with the ultimate decision, but they'll appreciate the process and what you did.
Well, and Bob,
and who you are.
And Bob and Sarah, I think, are uniquely qualified for that in having been process people. Bob is a legislator,
Right.
So there is a process in the legislative, in legislative bodies. And Sarah is a service member, as a member of the military, very process oriented,
Very.
right?
Yeah, and very collaborative, part of a team.
Very much.
Part of a
very
team.
much so.
Yeah. And I loved what Sarah was saying about the trying to create a home for people who have served, who don't want to be pulled, in one direction or another, who genuinely want to preserve that independence to do the right thing, in the end, and not to be dictated to about
They don't want to
how
be
to
used
decide.
either.
They don't want to be used.
Her invoking that and talking about being used as political pawns is it just left a pit in my stomach. That's a horrible thing.
So, and the other thing that I took
We've
away
seen it
from these
happen.
conversations is how wonderful our state level volunteers are, how
they're
inspiring
great.
they are, and how critical it is that we ask more people to come forward.
Mhm.
These are the kinds of individuals you'll be working with if you join the Forward Party. These are great people who are in it for the right reasons and genuine patriots. So
They're really
it's
great
super
people.
exciting
They are.
to just listen to them and see them very inspirational to me personally.
Well, that's what I
They're
hope.
they're real people. And you sense that.
We travel around the country, and I mean, we get to visit with them virtually, but we travel around the country and are with them, and it is
Right.
really, it does kind of fuel your soul. I mean, it is incredibly inspiring, and they're giving of their time, their treasure, their talents. They're taking time away from their families in order to build this thing with us. And we want to make sure they have all the resources and the support that they possibly can.
And that's why I think we have an obligation not to let them down.
Yeah.
Because they're giving so much, and we're all volunteers.
Yeah, and it can only be done from the bottom up, right? It can only be done with volunteers on a local level, on a state level. Then we can get around to doing things on a national level with strength and with wonderful candidates who they've nurtured and brought forward, from these local and state level offices. So I'm excited to see that day, and I think it's coming very rapidly.
Yep. The foundation continues to expand, get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's pretty fantastic. Well, thank you to our viewers and our listeners for another episode of the Forward Party podcast, and we hope you'll join us next time.